Hi, I'm Alan Ross, and we are at Distributech 2025. We've got interviews with thought leaders, and we'd love for you to see what we've done here. Hey, thanks for joining us. My next guest is Brian Nelson. Brian is with ABB, and you're going to tell me a little bit about why did you get in this industry, when did you get in industry, and what you're doing right now. But start there. Why did you get into the industry?
Believe it or not, I actually had a professor at Purdue University who said,
Purdue, I love it. Smart people, bad football,
bad basketball team.
Yeah.
He said, find an industry that's in demand. And man, when ABB came to the campus to interview, boy, did I find an industry in demand with electricity. So I joined up with ABB and was able to rotate around a little bit, really find what I love, which really was supporting investor-owned utilities for a majority of my career. So
do you know how unique that is? Because there's not a lot of it. They're trying to find more, and we're getting more exciting, right?
Yeah.
Now that you're in it, you're saying that was the right decision.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly right. Because at the time I really didn't know, but very quickly, I came to realize how important electricity was. Yeah. And then to be responsible for investor-owned utilities as a supplier, to see our products be put into their systems to ensure reliability of electric supply really was phenomenal. So I did that for about 10 years and then had actually recently transitioned to renewable energy, where I managed the segment for ABB.
Okay, the entire renewable segment?
Renewable segment for the United States.
Okay, all right. Which is also booming. Right.
Absolutely.
And create, I think of things when we solve a problem, we create a problem, because renewables are creating a problem with power quality.
Sure.
All the things that are happening in there. The other beautiful thing about it is you are seeing the new future. So that's going to be pretty exciting. What did you do before you did the renewables?
So I was an account manager for investor-owned utilities. So I started in the Midwest in Indiana, and then moved to the Southeast, where I was responsible for one of the largest utilities in the United States, which was fascinating because to be able to see their complex network of generation sources, right?
What was that?
Duke Energy was the customer that I supported. And they were so great because they were also on the kind of the bleeding edge of where electricity was going and what's the future look like. And some of the ideas that I have today really stem from discussions I had with them way back when.
Yeah, it's one of the things you mentioned there. Who did you work with in the Midwest? Who was your biggest?
So I was Duke as well, but Indianapolis Power and Light, Dayton Power and Light, NIPSCO, the region, Northern Indiana Public Service Company, which I love calling on those guys too, because it was really interesting at that time because you had small utilities. Think about Indianapolis Power and Light. They're basically Marion County in the middle of Indiana, and they have a really compact customer base. Then you got NIPSCO that butts up to Chicago,
right,
and Dayton, which at one time, Dayton was a booming industry, cars around the 1900s, and now it's changed and shifted. And so to have that kind of customer base where you have different needs and opportunities was really exciting.
Yeah, so you learned a lot there, learned a lot from Duke, and you're in the right place. Do you work with Southern Company now?
I do not work with Southern Company.
Let's go from there. I want to ask you, the industry is going through change, and you've seen it, so it's not like it's new to you, but there's been more change in the last 5 years, maybe 10 years, than there were in the 50 years. So right as you got into it, it started to suddenly change. In an industry that is reluctant to change, that's not necessarily true for the industry as you do that. Talk a little bit about that in terms of today, what you see. Where are we today? Where are utilities today?
Yeah, it really was interesting. As I came into the industry, we're just starting to put things like scrubbers and different things on coal-fired power plants to make them, less carbon intensive.
What was that? A coal-fired car?
Exactly.
Exactly. We don't have any of that.
Well, and then fast forward to today, where those are being shut down and being replaced with natural gas and renewable energy and things like that. So to be a part of that transition has really just been exciting. I've started to see with the utilities really a more openness to understand what technology can do to help them move forward.
Yes.
Utilities have a really tough job. And I think, folks at this conference understand that, right? But to be able to generate, transmit, and distribute electricity is a very hard thing to do. And so if you have something that works, why do you touch it? Right. But now with technology being, advancing so much, we have things like, intelligent substations and devices that can really pull a ton of data so that you have all of this information that you can now use to ensure resiliency and reliability. I have seen a shift in the utilities to be more open to at least hear what suppliers like ABB have to offer, really to enhance what they're doing, which is increasing reliability, trying to keep rates low. And it's really been an exciting time, and we're right in the middle of an energy transition, and that's not going to stop. We got power going both ways, and like you said before, that's causing some complexities on the grid, which together as suppliers and as utilities, we've got to figure out together to make sure that we're not impacting their customers, which rely on that electricity to be on when you flip that switch.
Yeah, about 5 years ago, I got involved with the IEEE Smart Grid program. Now it's a smart grid under another PES. We created the Grid Edge Conference, which happens in January every other year from the T&D conference. And we've learned a lot that at the Grid Edge, because we used to define the Grid Edge as primarily the renewables. But that's also now moving out to the data centers are truly part of the edge of the grid. Industrial reindustrialization. I know in Dayton, I did some work for a manufacturer there that closed down. That plant is now back open, but it's not making what it was. The reason they went there is because of the quality workforce in the Dayton area. But you see the change. So reindustrialization, they need power. We need clean power. And if we have a load growth, I know that I asked about Southern Company, they have an 8% load growth. They've been flat for like a decade. 8% load growth is in the utility world is a hockey stick event, right? Now, they brought on a nuclear site recently, the first one in 30 years in West Georgia. That's already sold out because of the AI data centers in North Atlanta. These are the kinds of things that are happening all over. And you're in the middle of it with your renewables. Talk to me a little bit about if I'm somebody looking at what you can do for me at ABB. Give me the pitch. Tell me why.
We're about to go through a really cool transition to solar power, by the way. It's a little bit in the weeds, but collection system voltage today, if you're at a grid scale solar plant, that collection system where you have the modules coming into a combiner box is going into the inverter, which is taking it from DC to AC. That's all happening for the most part at 1500 volts DC.
Okay.
Well, 2000 volts is right around the corner. And when you go to 2000 volts, the voltage goes up, but if the current, if the voltage goes up, the current can actually come down, and that helps you with CapEx. CapEx of these projects is going to come down. Your capacity is going to go up because you're going to be able to put more modules on the string. And so we're right there at this time where we're going to see this transition happening. So essentially, that means that power density of these projects is going to go up. So we're going to be able to put more renewables on the grid in kind of a smaller, or, if you have the same amount of land, you're going to be able to have more megawatts, which is really going to just help accelerate the speed of deployment of renewable energy, which is really exciting. Then if we look at the substation, we are going to have to build a tremendous amount of substations to bring all of this power onto the grid, which is really exciting. It's a really good opportunity. We really believe in intelligent substations, protocols like IEC 61850 that kind of enable interoperability to really help us install substations quicker, give us information at our fingertips so that we can make informed decisions, in the moment to ensure that reliability continues to increase. So at ABB, we have the components that enable this 1500 volt to 2000 volt jump. And then we also have the systems to enable those substations to be able to build faster, ultimately to try to get more renewables on the grid. So it's a really exciting time. I fully believe that renewable energy is absolutely going to be required as we move forward. If we look at the demand, you mentioned Southern Company and their demand, 8% growth. Well, across the United States, we're seeing growth in a lot of areas, and we are not going to be able to build enough natural gas to fill that need. So we're going to have renewable energy. So increasing the density, the power density, and getting it onto the grid fast, I think will help us be able to meet the need.
It sounds like all of that, too, would help with this. So it's not really mainstream now, but it's beginning to be mainstream. Microgrids. For communities, microgrids for industrials. We have, and I'm the vice chair of a company that works within the industrial reliability and safety world. And one of our clients has a lot of land in Alabama.
Yeah.
And you know what they got on that land now? They've got a solar plant and they've got wind on their, and they're not trying to get off the grid. They're trying to control their power, usage, quality, everything about it. But talk a little bit about what you do that might accelerate the use of microgrids.
Sure. Well, I think it really comes down to the intelligence and the devices. Circuit breakers today can do some pretty amazing things, right? You not only is it going to protect your system, but it also is going to be able to give you data that is actionable, right? So if you see current or voltage spiking, you're now maybe in a network of connected devices that can really help keep the lights on. I think that's the core of what microgrids can really do for C&I customers or even residential customers, which is provide that sense of reliability, right? In case of emergency. And we started to see natural disasters become more and more powerful.
Right.
And so that ability to use the technology today that's intelligent to be able to keep the lights on or the operation running or whatever is, I think, of utmost importance. And at ABB, we really take it seriously, thinking about as storms have gotten stronger. That means at ABB, we need to look about how we make our devices less susceptible to things like flooding, less susceptible to things like very high winds, which we're keen to do because we understand that we're a part of this system that keeps the lights on for a lot of people. And so microgrids will continue to be really, I think, adopted and that will grow. One of the things I'm excited about microgrids is DC microgrids.
I know. And okay, that was going to be my next question here. Yeah. Kind of like the Pearl Street station that Edison did up in New York. Yeah.
Yep. We're going back. Isn't it amazing?
Back to the future.
I really think the opportunity at DC is a good one.
Yeah.
You think about it. Everything we do is in DC. We charge these phones in DC. We fast charging for electric vehicles in DC. Data centers in DC. And so why can't we have, a DC grid? And maybe it's a microgrid to start out.
Right.
That's solar is native DC. Batteries are native DC.
Yeah.
So it really makes sense to me to have more and more things in DC. And I'm excited about that possibility.
See, I saw you smile when I said, because I am too. I think that's a future. Speaking of the future, when you take a role like you've taken at ABB, you have to look ahead. You have to say, hey, we know there's a lot of change, but we also know there's going to be more change.
Yep.
What are some of the things that you think utilities are going to be facing that they're not facing today?
Artificial intelligence is going to play a role here, right?
Yeah.
And so how do we leverage as an industry artificial intelligence to get the outcomes that we want, which is, I think, the lower the cost of electricity, increase reliability.
Right. That word, if I've heard it once, I've heard it 10 times at this conference. The utility industry wants outcomes. They don't want to buy stuff. Right. Tell me what the outcome is going to be if I put your system in, if I do what you're asking me to do. So that's very good. Outcomes-based decision-making.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what our job at ABB is to enable the utility customer to have a sense that when they install our devices, you're going to get the full life cycle of that device, which is going to enable them really, hopefully, to increase their reliability, but then also lower the cost of electricity, right? We want to make sure that our devices are an enabler really for that end user, which is turning on that light switch and the power goes on. And because when it doesn't go on, that's a really big deal and it can have dire consequences. And we understand that. And we want to make sure that our components are reliable and effective in doing that.
Okay. Reliability, resilience. You build things to last during things so that it can come back quickly. We can't prevent things, but resilience is, reliability is making sure it doesn't go down. Resilience is getting back up when it does or whatever happens to it. There's another move too. This is primarily in the industrial area, and this is an area that I think I call it the underserved area. And it's they didn't make decisions 5 years ago that utilities made, especially about buying assets.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Transformers, power transformers is 3 to 5 years, depending upon who you ask. Right. If you're an industrial and you didn't make that decision, let's say you got 4 primary subs, maybe one spare, which has no bushings on anymore.
Correct.
It's just sitting in
Just sitting there. We need a month to put it together, but
that's exactly right. And by the way, the bushings are another 2 years to get. So everything's there. Talk a little bit about, can you superimpose over that, or how do you help? How do you get them to be part of the positive decision-making as opposed to always reacting? They are the end of the grid. Data centers got in front of them.
Yes.
AI data centers got in front of the regular data centers. Right. Chip manufacturers got in front of them. But if you're a steel manufacturer, a paper manufacturer, any sort of production or processing, chemical processing, refining, you're kind of still not the grid edge, you're the edge of the grid edge.
Right.
Talk a little bit about that, what you can do to help them.
I think for a company like ABB, it's about giving that customer options.
Right.
One of the things that we've done down to the switchboard level, which ABB has a robust switchboard business, is started to give the customers options. We have an accelerate program. And this is pretty cool because the same thing that's happened with transformers, high voltage breakers, we've seen lead times creep up. Same thing happened with switchboards as well. And so we started to think about, well, how can we help our customers? Because there are some that we have to have this. We have to get energy going. Yeah. And so we started to give them options. So we have an accelerate program. If you are in urgent need, I can get you a switchboard in 2 weeks. Now, you don't have a lot of options, but I can do it.
Okay.
And now if you want to have something that's customizable, it's going to be about 25 weeks, right? And then if you want something that is fully customizable, you design the whole thing, it's going to be back to that, 50, 48 weeks. So that's, I think, something that ABB has done to help our customers.
Yeah,
give them options, right? Yeah. Because it could be that, that 2-week switchboard will work. We can make that work. Or it's that 24, or if if you have plenty of time, then you could really get exactly what you want with the customized engineered order option. So
should do a buy to own on that one and say, look, we'll build you the custom one, but in the meantime,
there you go.
Oh, that is really a
good idea.
Yeah. Take right out. Brian, it's great to meet you. It was great to meet you.